Do
like
you believe
Netanyahu.
Israel and Israelis are being singled out by BDS?
I wouldn't say unfairly. I think the occupation has gone on far too long. I think Israel does need to start facing some costs and consequences for an occupation.
But not BDS.
I would say, where are you focusing BDS? Are you focusing BDS on the
But can you just go off to the settlements? Yousef makes the point that they're a product of Israel proper, and the two are so intermingled, Israel, the occupied territories. Can you say this is Israel 100%, this is settlements 100%?
I think it becomes difficult, but I think you do need to make that distinction as you go about targeting
okay, well, let me put that to you, Yousef.
I'd like to just respond to one point which I think is really critical, because this always is where the debate around BDS ends up going is, well, what about the Israelis that you're trying to convince? The public opinion in Israel has been very forcefully and successfully shaped by right-wing leaders, to the point where even Israelis on the Israeli left have more or less disappeared when it comes to influence in pushing Israeli public opinion.
I think the BDS movement, from my perspective, has helped to elevate a debate that I think is long overdue. So to that extent, I think that's a success in and of itself. My own concerns about BDS goals aside. As to the actual economic impact, I see very little evidence of any real impact. But I want to get back to the point you made about Netanyahu. I think the proof is just in the fact that Netanyahu himself has spent so much time talking about the BDS movement. When he was here at the AIPAC conference several months ago, I think this most recent one or the one before that, he spent half of his speech talking about Iran. He spent the other half talking about BDS. So I think there's just no question that the BDS movement has provided fodder for Israeli politicians. That's not to say they wouldn't find something else in the absence of BDS.
Of course. But that's what they've been doing with Iran for the past several years. And what we're seeing today is, as Iran is being taken off of the top of the international community's agenda, the boogeyman that the Israeli right wants to now focus on is BDS.
Palestinians want public support, international support for BDS. Palestinian civil society are calling for BDS. BDS is in line with international law. Yousef pointed out earlier on. You, as a supporter of Palestinian rights, human rights, as a supporter of international law, should be getting behind them, even if you have your concerns about the goals. Isn't that the case?
No, I think it's very fair to bring up what Palestinians have asked for in achieving their rights and their freedom. But I still think it comes down to a question of what are your ultimate policy goals?
To that, I would say the policy community has also had a conversation that has been completely devoid of what BDS tries to bring. And that is the kind of pressure necessary to actually reach the stated outcomes in those policy discussions. And what BDS is doing, and what I think only BDS is doing, as a civil society movement within the international community, is saying this is how we're going to provide the pressure. The United States is not doing that. The United States is providing billions of dollars in military aid every year, furthering the incentives of Israel to maintain the status quo.
You mentioned the United States, and you're based here in the United States. Many would say to you, critics of BDS would say, why are you singling out Israel for a boycott campaign and not the United States or the United Kingdom, which illegally invaded and occupied Iraq, caused far more deaths in Iraq than Israel has caused in Gaza or the West Bank? Why single out Israel for a boycott and not these other international law breakers?
It's very simple to understand. This is a Palestinian movement. There's only one state that is occupying Palestinian territory. That's the state of Israel. So I think it's very clear why the state of Israel is the target of this movement. I'm not being occupied as a Palestinian by China or by Iran or by Brazil or anybody else. That doesn't mean that I'm not sympathetic to those causes and I wouldn't support them, and the basic principles of human rights should be supported around the globe. But if we are to say to every movement, every particular movement for progress that supports any people's struggle, well, why don't you go do this instead? It's only meant as a tactic to distract and repress those kinds of movements, and it should be recognized as such.